Secular Nation. Secular Nation. Atheist Alliance
Secular
of America.
Nation. Atheist
Secular
Alliance.
Nation.
Atheist
Secular
Alliance of
Nation.
America. Secular
Atheist
Alliance of America. Of America.
Hello, and welcome to the Secular Nation podcast, brought to you by the Atheist Alliance of America. I am your host, Tim Brennan. Earlier this month, me and my co-host Michael X spoke with Margaret Downey of the Free Thought Society. So, take it away, Tim. Thank you, Tim. All right, we are here now with Margaret Downey. Say hello.
Hello.
And you are the president of the Free Thought Society?
Yes, I'm the founder and president of the Free Thought Society. We have been a nonprofit educational organization since 1993.
And we hear that you've gone national.
Yes. A few years ago, we changed the name of the organization from the Free Thought Society of Greater Philadelphia to just the Free Thought Society so that we can do outreach to a larger geographical area. And it was quite successful. We doubled our membership within a week, and quite frankly, we are very pleased with how the group grew after the Reason Rally. Thousands of people signed up to receive our newsletter in March 2012. So we became quite large, so large that when I sent the last newsletter out via email, the server thought I was a spammer and actually shut me down.
It couldn't handle the quick success.
Right. You know, sending out 2,000 emails within 5 minutes was a little too much for them.
So also you're a frequent contributor to Secular Nation magazine.
Yes, I really do love to write, and our newsletter is quite popular. We not only have a lot of subscribers, but we also have a lot of people who send us articles. And one of our projects is collecting journey stories. We absolutely love to hear about the way people have come to the conclusion that religion is bunk. And each story is individual and interesting. So we want to share those, not only within our group, but also be able to share those with people who don't think like us. It's a means of outreach. We also collect discrimination stories. These narratives give us a view of how non-theists are treated in our country. So this is a very valuable survey of, have things improved or are things getting worse?
Is this ongoing? Is this something that our listeners could participate in?
Yes, if your listeners would visit the Free Thought Society website at www.ftsociety.org, you can look on the left-hand side and see Anti-Discrimination Support Network. And it is there that you can find information about the categories. And we have categories with work-related discrimination, family-related, community. We have students and teachers and media, and there are forms to fill out because we want to report first-hand narratives. We don't take hearsay or second-hand information. And a signature on these forms guarantees us that we can share the information scientifically with places like the United Nations and other media that are interested in our narrative collection. The narrative collection has been ongoing since 1993, and no story is too old, as long as it comes to us firsthand.
So this has been going on for a while, and can we read some of those stories? You have examples on the website as well?
Yes, we do. What we do is to protect our narrative submitters. We do not disclose the name We only disclose the location and a brief description of what the actual narrative involves. And that way we protect the people who have been discriminated against even further. We get their permission if, for instance, Michael Newdow needs some proof that people are discriminated against by not saying the pledge. So, we have a list of those people. And if he needed information for a lawsuit, we would get permission directly from that person, explain why we need their affidavit, and we use that to help not only with Michael Newdow cases, but, other cases that we want to bring forward, such as in lobbying. We have a lobby effort, as you know, with the Secular Coalition for America. And this is our proof that not only are we discriminated against, but we are actual valuable members of the United States. So as a citizen, we need to sometimes protect ourselves. So the bottom line is that we, as non-theists, are evidence-based communities. So when we claim that we're discriminated against, we need to back it up with evidence.
Absolutely.
Certainly down with that. Tim, did you want to ask about the Tree of Knowledge?
Yeah, well, again, this is the holiday season is upon us, and you were involved in this is your second annual event that was held in Westchester, PA. I was actually there with you for that, the Tree of Knowledge ceremony.
Well, actually, our Tree of Knowledge started in Westchester, Pennsylvania in 2007. And for 3 years, for 3 years consecutively, we were allowed on the grounds of the Chester County Courthouse involved with the actual winter holiday displays. And the first year, it caused quite an uproar with the citizens. They didn't know what to make of our 18-foot high tree decorated with book cover ornaments. And we were vandalized about 7 times that year. But the next year, when we put up a 15-foot tree, we were only vandalized a few times. And then the third year, there was no vandalizing at all. The community became used to seeing the Tree of Knowledge and understood the message behind the Tree of Knowledge and left us alone. So that showed us that, it was really helping to change the thinking in the community, that we were no longer outsiders. But everything changed the next year. The Chester County Commissioners decided to ban our Tree of Knowledge. And the way that they did it was that they declared that free speech zone as theirs throughout the 2-month celebrations period during the winter. So the free speech zone then became all about we the commissioners, not we the people, and they put up displays that met the legal requirements of the 1984 Supreme Court case called Lynch versus Donnelly. Well, we contend that things have changed, that in 1984, the non-theist community did not have a recognized symbol, and that we can't possibly be happy with secularism being represented by a big fat plastic Santa Claus and a sleigh full of toys and a choo-choo train. So,
or Santa holding a menorah.
Yeah. Well, we're very unhappy with being regulated as non-citizens, and we contend that it stirred up hatred again in the community. Suddenly, the government was discriminating against a group of people that a lot of citizens would say, oh, good, that justifies my hatred against non-theists. So we tried the first year to change their hearts and minds, but we couldn't. And we ended up, instead of decorating a Tree of Knowledge, we ended up making our own makeshift display for a few hours called a human tree of knowledge. And that was our first event. That was 3 years ago, just a temporary display. And then the second year, we tried again to convince the commissioners to please let us have our tree back. And we had a petition that was signed by hundreds of people. We had people writing and calling the commissioners, and they did not budge. Even though there were so many protests against us being ousted, then this was our third year of trying different strategies to convince the commissioners to give us back our free speech zone. And I had testimony in front of the commissioners from secular Jews, Hispanic American free thinkers, and the non-theist Indian community. And there was one full day of constant telephoning and emails to the commissioners trying to convince them to let us have our tree back. Well, once again, we did not convince the commissioner that we needed to be back and that the community wanted us back and that it was the ethical thing to do. And this is the third year now that we had to, instead of gathering to decorate a tree of knowledge, stand there in the cold for a couple of hours, forming our human tree of knowledge and singing our songs and trying to be a part of the community in some way.
I also hear that a member of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster showed up to testify at some point.
Oh, yes. She's completely separate from what we're trying to do. I give Tracy McPherson a great amount of credit. She decided on her own that her religion, Pastafarianism, should have a place on the same ground that we were requesting our tree of knowledge. And she so bravely attended a commissioners' meeting and stood up and told the commissioners that she demanded a place for her religion to be equally recognized by the government with the Jews and the Christians, which the commissioners don't have any problem with. They allow a creche and a menorah. But, far be it from them to allow any other type of religion. What we really want to see are the Buddhists asking for Buddha Day displays and Kwanzaa displays to be welcomed, along with Pastafarians and the Tree of Knowledge. That would be the fabric of the community.
I'm surprised the Satanists haven't gotten involved either.
Well, we would welcome Wiccas and whoever it is that, has a day in that, or even, has any type of recognition of that season. For non-theists, we recognize nature, the turning of the seasons. We recognize that winter brings communities and families together in the warmth of friendship and love, and we want part of that too. A lot of non-theists actually give gifts during this time with their, they share their time with their family and their friends, and while they're celebrating the natural world, they really want to feel like they're part of something bigger. A community is what we want. So, it's an important time for us. There's also a wonderful event called Human Light. It was created by the humanists, and it celebrates reason and love and honesty and all the beautiful things that you want our fellow human beings to understand and be committed to: compassion, liberty, freedom.
So this sounds much more than just a war on Christmas as it's been characterized by, Fox News and others. That this is more of a, let's include ourselves, why are you leaving us out of this, for one? And second of all, let's have our own acknowledgement of what's important to us at this season.
When people claim that we are conducting a war on Christmas, I always counter saying, this is war on intolerance.
Exactly. Did you? I don't know if you saw the Jon Stewart interview or thing the other day where he referred to atheists as annoying and that we were kind of tilting at windmills. So you would respond. It sounds like by saying that we're going against intolerance, and that's always worth fighting, even if you are a smaller number.
Yes, and to express ourselves as citizens is extremely important for the non-theist community as we uphold principles such as separation of church and state and our secular constitution. So our way to do that is to be involved and to be a part of these winter holidays so that we are not a silent minority and we are not given a second-class citizenship through our government.
So back on the subject of the Tree of Knowledge. I mean, whose brainchild was that? I mean, who came up with the idea of the having this tree that's decorated with book covers?
Well, we did something pretty interesting at the Free Thought Society. We, for 5 years, asked our members to submit ideas about what would be an interesting symbol to recognize the non-theist community during the winter holidays. And we had wonderful ideas come to the board of directors, everything from a giant question mark to a Darwin fish wearing a Santa hat. And the board of directors took all the ideas, including some that, for instance, the sign that the Freedom from Religion Foundation puts up every year in Wisconsin's state capitol building. So all of these were given to the board of directors about 15 years ago. And for 5 years, the board of directors fussed and talked about what was yes and what was a no, and frankly, my idea was the Tree of Knowledge. But it turned out that the board of directors and our supporters who were involved in the contest voted in favor of the Tree of Knowledge, and it took off from there.
That's a wonderful thing. I mean, the whole thing, sometimes a lot of these protests, or not even protests or demonstrations, it sometimes feels like a losing battle, and this is such a positive symbol. It's a really nice way of kind of warming the heart a bit, especially when you feel like you're being shut out.
Well, what finally made the sale for us to adopt this symbol were a couple of things. One is that here was a way for our members to submit their favorite book covers. We required 2 color copies of their favorite book. In other words, the ornament has a front and a back. And we got together several times to actually make the ornaments as a community. So all of these book covers were submitted. People arrived with their favorite books. We made 2 color copies of their favorite books, and we cut them and pasted them back to back. We put them in lamination sleeves. We put them through the laminator. We trimmed them and cut them and poked a hole at the top where we could hang them on the tree. And the whole exercise was a joining exercise, an exercise of expression, and it brought people together with great joy. Then we took the ornaments and put them on a tree together, and you didn't have someone censoring another person. So, there was a big box of ornaments, and randomly we picked them out of a box, and in fact, we even had the Torah and the Bible, and we had the Quran up there. Now, we did do a little bit of planning on where we placed those books, because right next to them, we made sure that there was something for the other side. So when the Bible was put up, we made sure to have Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian hanging on the next branch. The Quran, we had Ayaan Hirsch's book, and we had the book Why I'm Not a Muslim hanging nearby. So, it showed a wide range of thought and a wide range of books that the public would not normally be exposed to. And quite frankly, I was trying so hard to come up with a way to continue our efforts of educating the public through the Tree of Knowledge, that this year at one of the commissioners' meetings, I suggested that the commissioners themselves look through our box of 200 ornaments and find the ones that they didn't like, and we wouldn't put those up. And they didn't even want that compromise.
Wow.
Yeah, I did, again, I was at the event, and I was able to see the very wide variety, and I did like the fact that we did include, a wide variety, including the religious text, because I think one of the things that, if it doesn't, it should define us as a community, is our openness to new ideas, even if they aren't necessarily concurrent with our own.
Yes, and I always say that anyone who reads the Bible back to back will come away as an atheist.
Do you have any other favorites? Tim, do you have any favorites that you saw that day?
Well, actually, I think my absolute favorite was the illustrated Book of Genesis by R. Crumb. I actually have that one. Actually, if I don't stretch the wire on my headphone, I can get my hands on it right now. No, well, just out of reach. Can't get it.
Okay, well, it's really one of the favorites, and that's what we found was most offensive to some of the passers-by with the Tree of Knowledge. If any of the Bible verses were illustrated on book covers, they were taken aback with their own Bible illustration. So, they got very offended when they noticed that one of our books had the Bible verse illustrated of the bear tearing apart the children that made fun of a bald man. So,
that's a heartwarming story.
Yeah. Well, they don't want to be reminded of what their Bible actually says. So, the question always becomes, how far do you censor something? How far can you go with making a point? Personally, I do not like demeaning someone's religion, and it doesn't feel right to me to know what the First Amendment is all about, to want to crush religion. I think that we have freedom of religion. So, far be it from me to tell someone that their religion cannot survive, even if it's in their own mind. I would say, oh, that's interesting. Keep it to yourself. Don't make any laws that I have to obey. But, that's your choice. And that's what was so wonderful about Tracy McPherson's testimony was, and by the way, I was on a radio program with her a few days after her testimony, and she brilliantly talked about Pastafarian stories and myths and beliefs. And the host of the radio show said that she was ludicrous, and he belittled everything about Pastafarianism. And that gave me the opportunity to counter with, well, that was rude. You should not belittle someone's belief. I think the story of a virgin being impregnated by the ghost of a god and giving birth to a so-called son of God is a ludicrous story. But, I would respect your religion if that's what you believe. So it opened a few doors for us to have the Pastafarians involved in this particular effort.
Well, that's true. It reminds me of one of the best aspects of the civil rights movement, in that less than yelling at anybody, or you're essentially saying to those in power, "I dare you to force me away from what I have the right to do."
Right.
We have the right to put up this tree, and why are you blocking this when you're allowing others to do the same?
Correct. And there's this giant tree on the grounds of the Chester County Courthouse symbolizing commercialism. It has presents spread out on the base of the tree, and it's decorated with fancy ornaments. And, I have to laugh because the commissioners find that is okay. But according to the Bible itself, I believe it's in Jeremiah 10, something about the Lord saith that the customs of the people are in vain. That's talking about the pagans. For when they go out to cut a tree from the forest with their axes and deck the tree with silver and gold, and they fasten it with nails and hammers that it doesn't move. They call those people heathens in the Bible. So here's, this giant tree representing heathenism, I guess.
Or the god of bling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's clearly stated enough in our culture, but there is two separate holidays when we involve in Christmas. There is the birth of the Christian Savior, and then there's the holiday with the tree and Santa Claus. And one of the things that sort of I don't want to say it's my problem with Christmas, because, I like Christmas time, the season. I just almost killed myself putting my Christmas lights up. But it's this whole idea, it so dominates our culture for well over a month. I mean, because it starts up well before Thanksgiving, and it continues on until New Year's Day. This whole holiday, because I was having a conversation with a friend last month about the whole Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays thing. Is there any other holiday in which it would be socially acceptable to wish them happy X whatever, over 3 weeks beforehand? At the time I said it was November 11th, and I said, well, what if someone came up to you and said, Happy Thanksgiving? He says, yeah, I think that'd be a little weird.
I'd like people to celebrate my birthday 3 weeks in advance.
Because I was actually, the other day I saw a car with a bumper sticker that said, Keep Christ in Christmas. I'm like, yes, we should. Let's keep Christ in Christmas. Let's build a wall at the end of December 24th and at the beginning of December 26th and keep Christ inside that so he can't get out.
Well, the problem I have with that is, if people really were educated, they would know that there is actually evidence that Christ or Jesus, the whole myth thing, could not have even occurred in the month of December. There's descriptions of Jesus' birth that indicate that it actually occurred sometime in the month of September. So, people who are educated about this would actually know that they're celebrating wrongly, and that should be an offense to them. Now, when people say Merry Christmas to me, I look upon that as a means to educate them. I enjoy saying, oh, but I don't celebrate Christmas. And they look back and immediately say, oh, Happy Hanukkah. But I also say, no, I don't celebrate that either. Happy holidays, I celebrate the changing of the seasons. And sometimes I say, happy winter solstice, or, happy human light. And I think it's our way of educating people that would not normally even think about what words they are uttering.
That's the other thing that's kind of going around with the whole, like right now, the, Bill O'Reilly Fox News crews have been trying to somehow make it that saying Happy Holidays is somehow insulting. I said Happy Holidays to someone at blah, blah, at my job, and they said Merry Christmas back to me, but the translation was clearly F you.
When you're working with the public, I think it is more polite to use a generic greeting such as Happy Holidays. If someone would say Merry Christmas in a store, I think there's an assumption that that's okay to promote Christianity. And that's why I always counter with, my response. And I've even had a little back and forth with people in the public, such as grocery stores and working at sales counters, that it really is impolite to assume that someone is Christian and wants to be greeted in that manner.
If I were a Christian, I'm sorry, if I were a Christian, I wouldn't want, to force other people to say Merry Christmas who weren't Christian, because that would be watering down the meaning of the term.
From a practical sense, if you're working in a store and you're saying Merry Christmas, it's automatically incorrect, because if it was actually Christmas, you wouldn't be working that day.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it sounds like the UK's version of the Boy Scouts is actually making an effort, unlike the US version, of becoming more inclusive of atheists. Do you see that possibly happening in our country as well?
Well, I always look upon the Boy Scout issue as something that I may not see changed in my lifetime. But I'm very proud to stand with other families from the 1980s and 90s who were pioneers in pushing the Boy Scouts to be accepting and brotherly tolerant of people who think differently than the so-called acceptable religions that they give badges for. And I really worked hard to form a network of families back in the 1990s to help educate the Boy Scouts about the value of our non-theist children. And from the very beginning, with Elliot Welsh and the James Randall family, we together have been promoting the idea that instead of saying an oath to God, that we just add one more O, that we would not be disruptive, we would not even be noticed that saying the oath with our duty to good is the perfect answer. And, we
my
have
duty to good in my country.
Yes. And so throughout my son's Boy Scout experience, he was in the Scouts up to age 12, we always added one more O. And you can, look through his book and see all of the things that we did with our activities as crossing off the word good and putting in the word God. Crossing off the word God, putting in the word good. And then we would do things like crossing off the word God, and we'd put science, down, or nature. And when his particular scoutmaster saw that we were crossing off the word God and putting in the word good, we were questioned, but they accepted us in New Jersey. It wasn't until we moved to Pennsylvania that it became very objectionable for us to substitute the word God with good. And that's when we were told we were not welcomed into the Chester County Boy Scout affiliation. And that was back in 1991. So,
and so you haven't seen any movement since then?
No, in fact, it got worse, and it continues to get worse. I did a show for Penn and Teller's show called Bullshit, and I predicted back then that things are going to get much worse now that the Boy Scouts have decided to be a private organization And sure enough, it is getting worse. Not only did they change the oath to reflect their version of a god. By the way, God is male, according to the Boy Scouts, and all-powerful. But they now even require 7-year-olds to sign a declaration of religious principles. They require employees and volunteers to sign a declaration of religious principles, which describes God and requires you to believe in this entity, this supernatural entity. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't want a scout leader who would, in a case of an emergency, fall down on their knees to pray to some supernatural God for help. I'd rather want to have a scout leader say, you know, this is our plan of action and it's up to you to save yourself. But
yeah, like I was a Cub Scout as kids, and I don't remember any religious aspect to it at all. I think is the Cub Scouts different than the Boy Scouts, or is it just or was the change sort of fairly recent within the 90s?
Well, within the 90s it became much worse because the Mormons and the Catholics pretty much took over the executive branch of the Boy Scouts and demanded more of a compliance to this discrimination policy. Every Mormon boy is automatically signed up to be in the Boy Scouts by their parents at the age of 7. And this, of course, drives up the numbers of the Boy Scouts. And they have such control because numbers matter, you know, with where they get their money and how they promote their organization. Now, remember I told you that the scouting organization is going to become worse and worse. What has happened in the last few years is that they actually have in their literature, in office, and because they're private, they're hard to get a hold of these documents, they actually say that because they are a private organization, they do not have to follow Americans with Disability Act guidelines. So we have heard of cases where children with disabilities are actually told, no, you can't come to our campground. No, you can't be a part of this program. And then the other article I have my hands on is they're now requiring weight designations. So, you know, if you're too fat and would have a hard time on a camp excursion, you're too fat for the Boy Scouts. They don't want you.
Well, at this rate,
That's just un-American.
Right. At this rate, maybe they'll become like the Shakers and they won't be able to get more members with all their restrictions on membership.
Yes, well, isn't it ironic that their uniforms are actual brown shirts?
Yes.
Yeah. Now again, you were talking about the English. Well, yeah, we were mentioning the English Boy Scouts. Do we know who is in control of that? Obviously, I don't think it's the Mormons as much, because I don't think they have much pull in England.
Yes, I'm not familiar with the actual scouting organization there, but if it's anything like the other scouts around the world, it is a down-the-line organization. So whatever comes from the executive branch, which is the top, would have to be followed all the way down to the most minute volunteer. And that's the problem we have in the United States, is we cannot convince the executives in control to be more open and tolerant. I did do something back in 1993 where I got my hands on the board of directors list, and I wrote to every member of their board disclosing the intolerances and the cases, and, you know, just to make sure that if they had any power at all and they found this disagreeable, that they could possibly help us change the minds of the executives. And I was quite shocked to see that Steven Spielberg was a member of the board. And I reached out to him, Yes, I reached out to him. I was invited to his office. I spoke with his assistant in person, and we communicated. Every time something happened, like a court case or a new family was discriminated against, I would contact the Spielberg office. Well, finally, after 8 years, Steven Spielberg stopped supporting the Boy Scouts. And I was quite pleased to see that when the special was done about Steven Spielberg, not one mention of his association with the Boy Scouts was made.
That's good. Now, you don't have the same problem with the Girl Scouts, as my understanding is. They are a fairly progressive organization, I think.
Yes, because my history goes back so far in this issue, I can tell you that in 1992 there was a case in California where a little girl was found to be from a non-theist home, and the Girl Scouts actually threw her out. My friend Jim Randall took the case, and as it went to trial, the entire troop dissolved over the issue. Rather than take on an atheist girl, they decided to disband. And it caught the attention of the National Office of the Girl Scouts. And in court, they realized how ridiculous it was to have this oath to God and to discriminate. And it was quite moving in the courtroom setting. I can, provide copies of this to people who are interested. But immediately, it was as if they realized that they could not proceed this way. It was embarrassing. And in 1993, the national group met at a conference, and they decided in 1993 to drop the requirement of an oath to God. And since 1993, any girl can join. They can say, my duty to good. They can say my duty to the tooth fairy. Whatever they want or feel comfortable saying is allowed.
Oh, that's great.
Well, of course, the Boy Scouts condemned that decision and called them weak, and they even went on a campaign to try to defund the Girl Scouts, and the Boy Scouts actually went out of their way to get them kicked out of churches as meeting places, and tried to get the Catholic Church to not sponsor the Girl Scouts because of that. It was this vicious fight of the Girl Scouts were making the Boy Scouts look bad, so they...
Were there allegations of cooties?
Yes. So, I'm just amazed that the Girl Scouts still have so much trouble. They want to provide real life sex education, for instance. And what happens? The Catholic Church exploded and condemned the Girl Scouts, kicked them out of churches. It's really a pathetic viewpoint of educating children. Your way, the church's way, is something that's antiquated, and these girls are trying to fight that. And what do? They get punished.
Isn't that always the way?
Well, I always say support the Girl Scouts, buy those cookies, you write letters saying how much you respect the Girl Scouts, and let's make sure that they know that they have supporters. In fact, I really have to tell you quickly about an incident at the rally we had on the Washington Mall, Atheists in Foxholes. And it was so amazing because who showed up to give us candy bars and ice cream and water? Troops of Girl Scouts.
Not the Boy Scouts.
Nope,
not
wonderful. The Boy Scouts.
No, I remember I went to an Eagle Scout ceremony once a couple years ago that a friend of mine was becoming an Eagle Scout, and he was an atheist, and so it was incredibly awkward to watch this almost evangelical ceremony go on, and knowing what he believed, and to see that he was very proud of obtaining his badge, but also had to live a lie in a sense.
Yes. Well, Scouting for All, a national organization that is trying to convince the Boy Scouts to change their policy. Scouting for All actually started in Petaluma, California, when an Eagle Scout, or a Scout trying to get his Eagle badge, conducted this community service to help the gay community, and his eyes were opened, and he said, my gosh, these are wonderful people, but I can't even have a scoutmaster who's gay, and I can't be involved with my gay friends. And he actually, at age 17, started this group called Scouting for All. And I've been a board member of that particular organization for about 20 years, and I think it does great work.
One thing I read that you were, was it you that started the Richard Dawkins Award? Was this correct?
Oh, yes. Thank you for remembering that. I'm quite proud of that. That was back in 2003. And it just occurred to me that Richard Dawkins was a potential superstar with all of his wonderful books, and he was pushing forward the tenets of atheism, and the proud association with a man of such brilliance could actually help an organization promote the same ideals. So with his permission, I submitted the idea to the Atheist Alliance, and it was adopted, and our first awardee was the amazing Randy. And so we had a good time with that in Florida, and Richard was quite proud, and it's continued ever since. I also designed the way the award is supposed to look, which is reminiscent of our paleontology and our knowledge of fossils. And so each of our awards are done beautifully as if it's going into a museum. So our awardees are so happy with the style of the award. I did something different for Anne Duran, who is Carl Sagan's widow. When we gave her an award, I had a beautiful plate made that resembled the universe, and we put a sail, a silver sail, the cosmos idea, in the plate itself.
So each one is different?
Each one is different, yes, and we used to name the awards after one of Richard's books. When we gave Julia Sweeney her award, it was based on unweaving the rainbow. So her award was a mineral that actually changed lights from within.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because on our cover of Secular Nation magazine is the commemoration of it was Eugenie Scott, who was this year's winner, and her award, it was the skull of was it Homo erectus, some hominid skull.
Yes, I stepped away from the committee, and it's been in the hands of several great volunteers. They're doing a fabulous job. And Richard Dawkins seems quite pleased. I was with Eugenie Scott that weekend. She had to fly from Atlanta to Colorado to receive the award, and then she flew back to Dragon Con, which is where she and I always see each other. Have you ever heard of Dragon Con?
Oh, yeah, I am a popular fiction major, so it's kind of required that I go to these conventions, but I don't, but I should.
Uh-huh. But we always have a good time. We always have a great time at the Skep Track. And this year was the first year that we had a parade entry, a skeptic parade entry. I had a lot of fun organizing that, and we're going to continue that every year. And we enjoy walking down Peachtree Avenue to a crowd of about 40,000 people.
But back on the subject of the award, like, what process goes into selecting a recipient of the award? As in, what do I need to do to get one?
It may have changed since I started the award, so I don't want to speak about the requirements or the type of overview that a person receives, because it may have changed. But we basically wanted the recipient to be promoting the same principles as Richard Dawkins promotes in his books. So it could be in any field, such as science or the arts or in skepticism. So that's why we went with different types of recipients. When Penn and Teller received the award, it was because they had the tenacity to stand on stage and talk about atheism in their show and to promote skepticism by showing how they do their tricks. And so that, needed to be recognized.
Now, I do have to admit, though, I've kind of, when I first heard about the Richard Dawkins Award, I did feel a little uneasy about it, just because of this idea. I think that there's this perception that we are promoting Richard Dawkins as sort of a cult-like figure. Do you think the presence of the award sort of supports that idea at all?
Well, there's always that worry that things become a cult of personality. But what we want to do is make sure that the work that a person does is recognized as valuable. So many times a wing in a hospital will be named after a person. That doesn't necessarily mean that person is going to be worshipped as a god. The fact is that your name is who you are, and your work being recognized, I don't think is something that we should be overly concerned about.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say at all that the work of Richard Dawkins is at all overvalued. I think his contribution to the movement is immeasurable.
He's probably the reason why I'm even talking on this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's face it, our non-theist community has our own set of heroes for various reasons. And we don't worship them as gods. We're not stupid people. We know that they're human and that, they have their problems and their humanism dictating to them. And, I don't think that any atheist would actually be a follower unless it made sense to adopt a certain philosophy. We are too independent for that. If Richard Dawkins suddenly turned religious, I'm sure that he would lose all of us. But, as a human being, he might. You never know about the human brain. We cannot expect a lot or too much from our heroes. But, we do expect them to be rational and scientific and reasonable. I have heroes that are little known. For instance, Alton Lemon. I got to know Alton Lemon, and to me, he's a hero. He, stood firm and went to the United States Supreme Court, and it's thanks to his tenacity as a plaintiff that we have the Lemon test to determine if something is too deeply involved in religion. It's the three-pronged Lemon test created by the U.S. Supreme Court's case Lemon versus Kurtzman. So, he's a hero of mine. Ellery Shemp, another U.S. Supreme Court winner, Vashti McCullum. All of these people deserve our praises and deserve to be remembered for what they accomplished in their lifetime.
On to a different topic. You were going to be pretty active this year, obviously. It sounds like there are some Friday the 13th celebrations coming forward.
Yes, I'm going to have a busy September next year. There's always the Dragon Con event, which is on Labor Day weekend, and I've been involved quite heavily with the skeptics. We have an event called the Carl Sagan, Essence of Carl Sagan essay contest. That's taking place at Dragon Con, and then our parade, and then I come back home and immediately have to set up for our Friday the 13th anti-superstition bash. And we only do it every 2 years, so we like to take advantage of educating the public about silly superstitions that occur on Friday the 13th. Gets a lot of media attention. It's a lot of fun. We do a dance. We do interactive games. We have a museum of superstitions. And this year, we'll probably co-host it with another national group. And it will be, like I said, September 13th, 2013, at a hotel near the airport in Philadelphia. That way people can fly in and enjoy the party, maybe enjoy a workshop, a field trip the next day, and have a good weekend. And then we are considering pursuing the Tree of Knowledge, because Banned Book Week happens at the end of September. And what better time to ask the commissioners to allow the Tree of Knowledge than Banned Book Week?
Well, and I think you'll probably see a couple of Atlantic City-based podcasters at the Friday the 13th bash.
Well, that would be wonderful. We enjoy having a wide variety of people there. Last year we had close to 200 just enjoying the dance, and we always have some superstars coming in. We've had the amazing Randy. We've had Michael Shermer. This year we're working on Joe Nickel, and also a person that people have never seen at one of these events, Todd Rundgren.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine, and he's expressed interest in this. So if he confirms that he's coming, we will be making a giant Todd Rundgren look-alike voodoo doll. So we've got lots of big plans for this Friday the 13th that will be shaping up within the next month, and we'll be making an announcement which we hope will carry and resonate throughout the country so that we can get a lot of people to see the beautiful city of Philadelphia.
Is there any topics that you think we might have missed?
I would encourage people to send ornaments to us, 2-color copies of their favorite book, unfolded, and we will make ornaments for anyone across the nation and place it on our tree and send pictures to show that they have a place on the tree. We're shooting for the last week of September as a Banned Book Week display if we can get permission from the Chester County Commissioners, so that's a goal. The next big event for the Free Thought Society, of course, is the Friday the 13th, taking place in September. And we would encourage people to look at the Dragon Con event and maybe participate in the Carl Sagan essay contest. We will probably have Nick Sagan as our special guest and Anne Duran. So it'll be a lot of fun.
And we can provide journey stories.
Yes. Please submit journey stories to the Free Thought Society. We have 8 proofreaders. So even if a person is not confident about the way they write, we can make sure that it's well done and catch all and any typos or grammatical errors. And we also want to hear from people who have been discriminated against. This is very important for us to continue gathering these discrimination narratives. And they can feel confident that they will be kept privately, the information will be private, and they will get a call or an email before anything is discussed about their case. We also help people who have been discriminated at work. We will help them fill out complaints. We connect them to their human relations commissions We try to find pro bono attorneys. We also have guaranteed counseling of a secular nature. We write letters on behalf of people as well. We had a situation where we have non-theists going into nursing homes, for instance, and we've had to write letters demanding that our supporter who had to go to nursing home stop being harassed by ministers and priests and being forcibly taken to a church setting. So we will stick up for anyone who is facing discrimination.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your attention to this, and I really enjoyed meeting you, Tim, and I hope to meet you, and it will be great to see everybody at the Friday the 13th event.
All right, so thank you, and whatever you choose to celebrate, happy holidays, and happy holidays to our listeners.
Yeah, it's a secular nation.
The Secular Nation podcast is brought to you by the Atheist Alliance of America. If you would like to become a member, you can go to our website at atheistallianceamerica.org. That's atheistallianceamerica, all one word, .org. Click on the support tab and select membership.